All right, good morning, everybody. I'm going to call this meeting to order, Bond Oversight Committee, May 20th, 2025. So we are going to go ahead and start with roll call. We have Al Lopez.
Here.
Myself, Gina Blackman-Taylor here. Rob Gerdison, excused absence for sickness. Sally Acorn.
Here.
Jessica Allen.
Here.
Abraham Camejo.
Present.
David Flatt.
Here.
David Flippo. Margarita Gamboa Harris.
Here.
Byron Goins. Nikia Jackson Hale.
Present.
Walter Jones. Stephen Silverkraus.
Present.
Oh, hi. Yvette Williams.
Here.
All right, as that constitutes a quorum, we will move on from roll call. But before we go into the meeting proper, I do want to make a reminder to please RSVP when it comes to Valerie's emails. Do not reply all, but reply directly to her so that she doesn't have to spend time chasing us down, as we now have a very full committee. That constitutes extra work on her part if she doesn't hear from us on an RSVP. And to that end, just as a reminder regarding our attendance in the current bylaws, I believe it is up to 3 excused absences within a 12-month period. And you can review the procedure for that in our bylaws or as we talk about it at next month's meeting. I also want to note that thank you to Brandon and the facilities team. We now have a Google Drive with all of the presentations that have been made to the Bond Oversight Committee over the past number of years. Unfortunately, we're not able to index it because that would mean adding a piece of material that isn't already public information. These are all public information documents. They've all been the presentations that we have received over the last few years, but it allows you to perhaps search for a topic so that we're also trying to get caught up on some of these topics when we don't really have the time to revisit all of them. So feel free to search that Google folder. Thank you very much, facilities, for making that information that is already publicly available. You can search for it, but to the Bond Oversight Committee members as a way to revisit those topics more easily. Is there anything that you'd like to add to that? Great. So we are going to move on to 1.01, the flag salute. Margarita, can I get you to lead us in the flag salute, please? Thank you, Margarita. We are now going to move on to 2.01, the approval of the minutes. This is, you should have that as an attachment. I will give 1 or 2 minutes to review if you haven't had a chance to do it already, and then I will take a motion to approve. I will say, is this as an action, so after the discussion period, but before we vote, if there's any public comment on the agenda, or I'm sorry, on the, oh, I missed, is this what you're coming to tell me, that I missed the agenda first? All right, lovely. Well, we're just talking. So 1.02, adoption of the agenda. So, and this is an action item, so do we have any discussion on the agenda? Yes. Oh. And then do we have any public comment on the agenda? Fantastic. I will entertain a motion to approve.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Thank you, Ms. Williams. Can I get a second, please?
Second.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Silvergrass and Ms. Gamboa Harris, or who, I'm not sure who all chimed in, but all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, the motion is adopted, the agenda is adopted. And now we shall move on to 2.01, the approval of the minutes. Is there any discussion regarding the minutes? Do we have any public comment regarding the minutes? All right, I will entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
I move to approve the minutes.
All right, thank you, Ms. Jackson-Hale. Do I have a second?
Seconded.
Thank you, Mr. Silvercross. So all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, the minutes have been approved, and we are going to move on to 2.02, reports by chair and/or liaison representatives. So we have Abraham Cameo and Al Lopez for construction. Would either of you like to let us know what's been going on in that area?
Abraham for the record. Just want to give kudos to Brandon's team. He was able to present to the Board of Trustees regarding the HVAC and the list of schools that are going to be getting new HVAC installation and repairs. So I just want to give him kudos for the hard work and for addressing this matter, trying to get the schools with the proper air conditioning for all the kiddos. Hopefully, there's no delays with tariffs and the other revolving parts of the world. But that way he can get all the parts needed, and that way we can have those schools on those 37 schools, I believe it was, that they could get the repairs much needed. And that's pretty much it from my end.
Thank you, Mr. Cameo. Mr. Lopez?
For the record, Alfonso Lopez, I have nothing else to report on construction at this time. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Al. Rob Gerson is absent. Mr. Flatt for site selection, land use.
I have no new news at this period of time. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Flatt. Ms. Williams, our new community relations person. Hello.
Well, hello, everyone. I'm sorry I missed you last month, but I don't have a report, but I would like to thank the chairman for the appointment as a community relations liaison. I have big shoes to fill. And so I would like to meet with you, Madam First Chair, so that you can pass the baton.
Anytime.
But I
Happy
do
to
have some
so.
ideas, and so I'll share those with you when we meet.
That I do not doubt. Thank you, Ms.
Thank
Williams.
you.
All right, then we are going to, this is a discussion only, so there's no public comment. We will move to item 2.03, report by Clark County Board of Schools Trustees Liaison, and Emily.
Hi, everyone. Not a ton to report. I do want to say that if you weren't watching or didn't know, last night the board approved we call it the final budget, but there's still, it's not really final. It'll be final more when we have real numbers at the end of the year. A lot of things are proposed, if you would, what we think is going to happen. It's going to come down to enrollment. There's still a lot of questions about what's happening up north right now. So we'll see what the state does in terms of that. But I will say that the team at the district has done a phenomenal job. They built in what I would consider some buffers, if you would. They've been very conservative with the budget so that should we see less money from the state, we're in a good position to not see any kind of shortfall or anything like that. Those questions were posed multiple times last night as people are always concerned when it comes to those things, especially when it comes to bond oversight and our buildings and so on. So I think we're in a very good position, and we'll wait and see what the state decides and what kind of funding we'll get this year. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Stevens. So now we will move on to 2.04. This is handing it over to you, Mr. McLaughlin.
Thank you, Random McLaughlin for the record. Just two brief items today, so just wanted to highlight, we'll be sending Distinguished Service Award certificates to Mr. Matt DeFalco, who is now rolled off the committee, and Mr. Todd Peterson concluded his service a few months ago as well. Just want to make you guys aware of those. We'll be mailing them to them. As Mr. Camejo also mentioned, last week, we had the great privilege of presenting to the Board of School Trustees about a critical HVAC initiative. I'm not going to give that whole presentation right in this moment, but if upon request, we can provide information to the committee on what that initiative is, as it's funded by non-bond dollars. But it targets our top 10% worst HVAC systems and makes small but strategic investments in those schools' HVAC systems ahead of the first day of school for this August. So we think it's going to be a great benefit for our students at those 37 campuses. And the line that stuck out from when we presented it last week was it's 37 less work orders that'll come in that first week, and there's a lot of volume of work orders in that first week. So it's kind of prepaying some of that, the issues we know we're going to experience when it's 115, 116 out, and we're trying to have almost 300,000 kids come into our building. So very proactive approach, and we're very happy with it. So with that concludes reports.
Thank you. Do we have any questions for Mr. McLaughlin regarding that topic? Any online? Oh, wait, I have seat 19. Oh, that's you. You made me put on my glasses and everything. Mr. McLaughlin, so with that sort of proactive approach, because I know that there had been a position that, in terms of modernizations and new building and all of these different priorities, and I understand that these aren't coming from bond dollars, but then how does that have an impact on, are any of these 37 campuses listed for modernization projects? How will that affect the projects as they've been slated?
Brandon McLaughlin for the record. So part of what we presented, there was 4 out of the 37 that are actually on the CIP, but that didn't preclude them from getting the improvements they needed. It was just really a work order history, a system condition index. As far as what went down last year, those were some of the criteria we utilized. And yeah, there was 4 on there that we are going to replace, and we'll have to salvage that equipment. And if we can just pop it off the roof and reutilize it at another site, we will. So again, some of those improvements are as early as 2 years, and some of them are as late as 6 years, 7 years down the road. So we knew there was immediate relief needed this summer for those campuses. So regardless of whether they're in the CIP, we just decided it was time for an investment there. But as far as what the funding was, it was our excess statutory reserve. And like I said, small but strategic and high in magnitude. It was $5.1 million to significantly improve the HVAC at 37 of our campuses, so 10% of our inventory. So very small, but very strategic, we felt was a good use of that excess statutory reserve fund that typically is for our capital renewal items on the asphalt playgrounds, carpet replacement projects, some of that life cycle stuff that just has a very predictable train for it.
Yeah, I don't think anyone on this board disputes the priority and the need to prioritize air conditioning. It's more of like knowing that there are limited funds, what was the sacrifice in order to make that happen? Because it seems quite prudent. I was curious more about the choices being made.
Yeah, and I actually appreciate your comments when we did discuss this a couple months back, because our strategic priority as a CIP is more comprehensive modernizations. This was divergent from that, but I think that's where we looked at, could we do these kind of single scope HVAC mods at those 37, and that's where the scale grew to a stage where it is beyond what our priorities are in the CIP, at least as of 2021. So the initiative we did here was like, how can we get it where it's to a low amount of threshold where we can be expedient, which puts us under, say, 100,000 and below, which then the total becomes pretty insignificant on this macro scale, but it still allowed us to be very strategic in where we deployed those new pieces of equipment. So again, little dollar, big impact.
speaking for myself, I think that that is appreciated to have that sort of strategy, especially going forward, where we look at ways in which we know that these are long-running processes. We know that we're looking at things that are 5 years, 6 years, 10 years out. And I think it can be very difficult to not acknowledge the need for expedience sometimes when we're looking at this sort of long-range planning. So I appreciate the flexibility shown in sort of looking for an expedited solution to this problem, and hope that we continue it as we get into that conversation about the facility master planning process and where we can look to move quickly when possible without sacrificing long-term aims. Is there other discussions?
I just had a quick question. Abraham coming for the record. The schools that are getting replaced, will the facilities be able to pull parts out from the older units and then take these air conditioning components and use them at other properties to replace parts that are no longer available for those similar units? That way, like a pick of parts kind of deal?
Just to clarify, is this on the 4 or on all 37 you're asking that?
If you could pull parts from all 37 and take them to another 30 to 40 other schools and replace those parts that those schools are waiting for, I mean, is that?
Yeah, I just want to make sure I understood the question right, but I mean, the answer probably doesn't really change actually in hindsight of asking the question. Yes, all of our schools, when we go to replace them, we have a 2-week salvage period where our maintenance teams come in, salvage what they can, and we do deploy them to other school sites. It's a very common occurrence on all of our replacements.
Perfect, thank you.
Any other comment online here? All right. Thank you for that. And now we get to move on to 2.05, our facilities master plan update.
Good morning. Brandon McLaughlin for the record again. I'm going to invite Mr. Rick Baldwin and Mr. Paul Mills. And Justin, if you can pull up reference 2.05, you're already on it. Yeah. So as they're setting up, a little bit of context. So you guys know September of 2024, we entered into the facility master plan process. We gave an informational to this committee in November of last year. We said, here's our few touch points. So we're predominantly through stage 1 of 3 that you'll hear some large chunks of effort. So very happy to report on the data portion of this. Here's what's the criteria we're going to be evaluating with the various stakeholder and district planning groups. And then we'll move into options as the next stage, which we'll hear tail end of the summer. And we'll move into some final action or change in the tail end of this year. So with that, I'll turn over to Mr. Paul Mills.
I'm sorry, can you pause for just a moment? I believe we had David Flippo join us in this meeting. Hi, David, can you hear us?
Yes.
Okay, can we
I
please
can hear you.
note his attendance and then just making sure that you're muted going forward? Thank you, Mr. Flippo, good to see you.
Okay, thanks. I'm going to put him on mute. I'm in a Uber right now in Washington, D.C.
Oh, well, great. Be safe. I'm glad you're in the back seat. Have a good, thank you so much. All right, thank you for that pause.
Good morning, Paul Mills, Canon Design for the record. Chair Blackman Taylor, members of the committee, it's a pleasure to work with you again. We are going to give you today a bit of a progress update as well as a report on the sorts of data that we're utilizing and have studied as we step into the rest of the process and give you a look ahead into next steps. So we've been very busy since our last presentation with you. You can see with the progress, with the check marks on all the different activities that have taken place in our intentionally designed master planning process, and we're at the latter stages of the data collection and stepping into the options phase as described previously. We've been very busy working with your stakeholders across the committee, and as presented in previous presentations to you, this process is designed around a structure of a partnership between the community and the school district. And there are work groups that represent each. There's one singular district planning group. We've had 2 workshops with them. These are the director level educational and operational leaders of the district. And we have 5 geographically oriented stakeholder advisor groups, or SAGs as we call them. We've had 5 workshops with, actually we at the point of printing, we had 5. We have now had 10 workshops, 2 with each of the 5. And we also have had 18 different community meetings. These have been in person, they've been virtual, they've been weekends, weekdays, evenings, daytime, and geographically spread across the district. They've been presented in English with available Spanish translation as well as monolingual Spanish opportunities for people to communicate in their native tongue. And a few 4 key points have stood out as being really consistent across the board, and what we want to share with you is that clearly students and learning are meant to be placed first. That as long as we're thinking long-term planning, we need to make sure that students remain the guiding light for this work. Your community also values equity and making sure that every student has the opportunity to achieve the best they can academically and preparing themselves for fulfilling lives. Also, we've heard loud and clear an openness to change, that positive change is definitely desired, and sometimes that can be challenging, but there is I would like to say, a courageous bent to your community, and folks are open to considering alternative futures that are different than the status quo. So we use the term that all options are on the table. And then also there was an appreciation and a demand at the same time that the community be involved in the process, and the process that we've designed and are implementing is definitely hitting the mark with them, that they definitely want to have a voice in the process and not just hear about it after it's been created. We've launched a website in partnership with Justin, Brian, and everyone in the communications team, great collaborators. At the point of printing, we had a survey that actually closed yesterday, and I'm proud to say we've gotten over 1,800 responses from across the county, and we're in the middle of disaggregating and studying that information, as it has very strategically oriented questions that'll help inform the options that we develop in the next stages. But this website has all manner of information. It's very transparent. It has all the documents that are presented publicly for those that were unable to attend, as well as interactive dashboards of all the various data that we're going to be sharing with you. These are available through your website, as well as a calendar of activities with links and locations and times for all the different events. Which brings us to data-informed design. We've been busy studying your buildings. We've been studying the demographics, working in close partnership with Rick Baldwin and his team, with the facilities team that works with him, as well as the demographics team. All the data collection is complete, and compilation and analysis is in its final stages of progress and review with the team. What you're going to see today is kind of what our current data findings are and those strategic takeaways from that. And I've been guided here to stop at each page along the way and allow questions and answers as we go, so we don't have to backtrack a lot, if that works for you guys. All right. So as far as data findings, similar to what I presented in the overall purpose when we started this process, is that one of the new challenges facing the district is that there is declining enrollment, as conveyed in the bar charts that you see here. For decades, Clark County, as you know, is the fastest growing school district in the country, and your team has expertly managed and navigated those dynamics in a way that really is unprecedented in the history of our country and should be applauded for that. The peak of enrollment was 2018-2019 school year, so a year before COVID found its way to us. But since that time frame, there's been about a 13% decline in students attending CCSD schools. Right? There's many factors associated with that. The pandemic clearly is one. People have explored different options, including homeschooling, charter schools, but the economy and the cost of housing has definitely had an impact on your communities as well. So the current enrollment year, just by coincidence, has dipped lower for the first time since charter schools started showing up in Clark County School District, or started operating and attracting and enrolling students. But this current school year is the first time that your total enrollment has dipped below the point that year was, and that was in 2005 through 6 school year. Had some questions?
Well, before we got too far into the population, I did write, you had 1,800 responses to the survey. I'm not sure what percentage that represents, but how would we compare percentage-wise to other large districts that you had worked with?
It's a great question. At this stage, for a large school district like yours, you might think, oh, that's not very representative voice. We do experience in a process like this where we have 2 rounds of surveying. One, which is more conceptual, when people don't really understand what's happening, has lower turnout. Later on, when there's actually change for consideration in terms of options, we see those numbers jump up dramatically. This is a pattern we see consistently. However, with 1,800 different voices that are from various parts throughout the county, we definitely have a statistically representable basis for making some judgments about priorities, proclivities, and values.
And then are you also able to decipher the drop rate of how many people start or do not finish that survey?
The survey, yes, we can, based on the progress on each response, it's anonymous, but by each entry, it collects one record, so we can see if you stopped at number 7 of the 17 questions or whatever it was, we can see where there might have been some drops. We intentionally put the voluntary demographic questions at the beginning so we wouldn't lose those, because it's so important to be able to disaggregate the findings by different geographical regions, different relationships to the district, whether you're a student, a family member, a community member, or a staff member, et cetera.
Okay, thank you. And it looks like we do have a couple more questions. Ms. Jackson-Hale?
Nikia Jackson-Hale for the record. So I also had questions about the survey and was wondering if those findings would be shared with this committee, especially if there are some trends in the responses that you're seeing.
Absolutely. So our team already has the dashboard built, and we've been tracking, monitoring, and tweaking the design of it. But all of that will be made available through the website transparently, and we'll be using that information and takeaways from that as we step into the options development stage. Great question.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Camejo.
Hi, Abraham Kamen for the record. So I actually attended a lot of the meetings in the community and online. And when we're talking about low turnout, it's pretty much me in the room. Literally hand counted. There was a meeting online that I attended that never started. I took pictures of it. The host never started it. This is one of the Spanish meetings. So if we're going to be targeting and trying to get a response, trying to have a Spanish meeting at Shadow Ridge High School, where I was the only one there, it's not a good location. Also, the meeting that happened at the Foothills High School, it was only a community member and Trustee Esparza was there, 2 people. So there was another meeting that I also went to, and I jokingly said, hey, where's my $50 gift card, because I was the only one there. So we need, and I understand the low turnout, but when we're talking about 1,800 and there's, 350,000 students, and that's a bad turnout, especially for the amount that's being paid for the survey. And so we need more community help, because I understand there's the consultants and everybody that's involved with this, but the turnout, it's so bad that I'm literally taking the great food home to feed my children, which is good food, but it's not there yet. So we need to tweak these meetings. We need to get there, because literally I have screenshots of multiple meetings, the online meetings as well, that nobody showed up. I'm the only person in queue, and some meetings never even started. Like, the host never hit the start button. And so, and then the in-person ones, you're gonna see my name on the sign-up sheets. So so how can we help this process more? Because 1,800 is a very low turnout, and the team is doing a great job. I've seen the presentations, but I'm afraid that we're not getting the proper voice that we need to be able to make to get the proper data so that we can, inform and then our trustees to have all that information, because collectively we're all in this together. So if we're not, I just feel if we're not hitting a base hit or not even a slam, we're not going to get the numbers. And so the numbers are just not reflecting, and that's very concerning. And so maybe retargeting certain schools in especially the red zones and where it's going to get affected the most, maybe that's where we probably should focus some of these meetings a little more. And once again, if there's anything, we're all here voluntarily, we're all here to help. So tap into that help, because we do know our community. I know my community. And it's just sad how the turnout is so low. And I understand not everybody's going to pay attention to, it's like elections, we tell everybody to go vote regardless of party, but the turnout is low. But in this case, this is affecting everybody's children in this entire community, and we just need to work together, and then, come in with your ideas and everything, so that way we can actually get better data, because I think the data you might present, it's low of what could be reflected. So just some of my thoughts.
Before we move on, I just want to offer, and this has been a helpful perspective for a few others along the way. It's 1,800 more voices than we've had at the table ever before. So yes, the number's low. We hear the comment. We'll just certainly address that for the fall engagement. But with the exception, we started in 2021 with having a few community meetings. There was a few voices at 4 specific locations. This is way more robust than all that. So I think, yes, we can certainly optimize it, but it's way better than when we ever have been, so.
Well, to kind of put a question to what also Mr. Camayo's statement is, because I agree it is concerning, but once we have this second round of surveys, I think what's more important is what sort of strategies are being deployed to get better answers and more robust response in that time period, and then how flexible are we in responding to the issues that come up in whatever broader survey response we get. Ms. Williams.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yvette Williams, I have a question in the same theme around community outreach. Do we have a community outreach plan? Curious what that plan looks like. What budget is being spent? I know we have subcontractors that have been hired for that purpose. So I'm curious as to, is there dollars that are being allocated for community outreach? The attendance was what's going to be one of my comments, but that's already been discussed. And then also, I'm very concerned about where those meetings are being held as well. We're not thinking in terms of an inclusive representation, and then, of course, outreach to those communities so that they can attend. Also, the timing of some of the meetings prohibit community to participate. So I'm very concerned about that. For example, we can look at the historical West Side. We can look at North Las Vegas. We can look at the Spring Valley community, which is very diverse. Depending on what school you select to have that, will draw a different community out. So you have a huge Ethiopian community. You have a huge Asian population in Spring Valley. I know in speaking with some of the community members, they're not even aware of it, and two, it's not convenient for them. So those would be my questions for you, is what that community outreach plan looks like, what the budget or dollars allocated to that. And then in regards to the stakeholder advisory group, my question for that is it inclusive representation based on gender, age, ethnicity and race, economics, are all the voices that are impacted in our district? Do we have fair representation there? And is there not policy, but procedure in place to allow for those minority voices? And I don't mean minority by race or ethnicity, just those who are least represented in that group. Do we have in place where their voices still have weight. So often, you have those who are least represented, and then they might be 1 or 2 votes, and then the rest of the group is the majority. We always kind of go with the majority. So then what ends up happening is those minority voices tend to not participate because it doesn't really matter. So those are kind of my questions from the perspective of making sure that everyone's voice is being heard and that we're hearing and valuing everyone's voice in the process. My other, I just wanted to ask one more thing, and this is more for you, Director McLaughlin, is around the portables, because I was looking at that capacity analysis. And so, maybe we can kind of talk
Can we
about.
get there first?
Yeah, whoever wants to go first, but
No,
those
but
are.
the portables one, can I couch it until we're on that page?
Oh,
'Cause
sure.
we'll
Oh,
probably
yeah, I
go
jumped
through
ahead,
some
sorry.
Yeah. So it's just, because this is a dense presentation, we just want to allow questions on the way. We don't want it to be like, hey, we're
Gotcha.
open for questions across the board, but it is dense. We want you guys to be able to answer questions in the moment, too. I'm going to kick it to Mr. Mills for the 2 you posed about the survey.
Yeah, we would have liked to have had more turnout with the meetings, with the survey. As one of the Spanish speakers, I was in personal attendance on all of the Spanish-speaking meetings, and while the attendance was extremely low, I do not recall a case where there might have been a technical issue or something on a meeting. Perhaps we sat around waiting in a couple cases as long as 20, 30 minutes.
I have pictures I can show you.
Fair enough, but not trying to be defensive. I'm just trying to share with you that, it's not for a lack of trying at all. You kind of acknowledged, hey, get out and vote. It's hard sometimes to get people motivated around a conceptual idea around improving schools. But once it gets very specific, you're going to be seeing over the summer, the Board of Trustees will be seeing over the summer a series of specific options that include status quo, but also might include change. When people hear that there might be a new school built in my neighborhood, they might change the number of schools or the grade configuration of schools or something like that in my neighborhood, then folks will start to pay more attention and we'll see a lot more turnout and participation. That's what we see a pattern consistently across communities similar to yours across the country. Relative to the composition of the stakeholder advisory groups, they were very intentionally designed. We leveraged the principals of the schools because they know their communities and could help nominate folks to participate on the SAGs, but we very intentionally guided around having students, having families, having staff in form of teachers, as well as administrators, different grade levels, whether high school, middle school, elementary school, and geographically dispersed. So we put a lot of attention into making sure we had a lot of the correct proportion of perspectives at the table. As far as budgets are concerned, our contract's a matter of public record, and there's a breakdown of how all the costs are allocated for the work, including community engagement. I think I addressed all your questions.
So on the community, is there a community outreach plan, and what is that budget?
There is indeed a community engagement plan developed in partnership with the communications team here at the district that involves all manner of direct communications through normal established CCSD channels, as well as leveraging external communications such as more traditional radio, print, as well as more modern using social media avenues of communications. And it's not for a lack of trying, with a lot of blasts out there, that we had low turnout.
So are we using any of the technology that we currently have in place at our schools for outreach to our parents? We can generate an email to our parent population at a school. Are we engaging any of those types of technologies
Yes,
to reach? And you're still not getting a good response?
that's correct.
Turnout. My other question then is from a budget standpoint, have those subcontractors that you hired, do they have is that budget rolled down to them for outreach?
Yes.
So, okay, and where can I find that budget amount?
We can follow up with it. We just don't have
Okay.
the contract in front of us, but we can email you guys out what
That'd be
that
great.
value is.
I'm really curious about that. And then my other question then as it relates to the stakeholder advisory group, I just want to clarify. So you mentioned students, which I was glad to hear that. Are they participating in these stakeholder advisory groups, the students that have been?
Absolutely. They're the ones actually
participating?
that keep everyone on best behavior.
Oh, good. Often they do.
And actually, as a point of, you know, an aspect of the design of this process is such that the district planning group, while it is district employees and leadership that are driving it, we have liaisons from each of the 5 members, and we have both student and adult members from each that will be participating in the planning sessions that we have with the DPG.
So the next round of meetings, because I think there's only been, what, about 5 meetings so far? 3, 5?
18.
There's been 18 so far? Are those 18 different school sites? Or just different times?
In a couple of cases, one was at College of Southern Nevada, one was at a community center. It was really at what was available and customary within the different areas.
Okay. All right, because it was, the feedback I've gotten is that it's not at many schools, not conveniently located.
Most of them are at schools.
Okay, so, all righty. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Williams. Ms. Allen, you had yours.
Okay, so a couple of things. Oh, man. I understand it's not a lack of trying that we're trying to get community voices involved. But knowing data analysis, saturation must be reached if we actually want to make meaningful impact with what we're doing. And this isn't a classroom where we focus on growth mindset. It's a business meeting. We need to get to where we need to get to. And if students and learning is first, then compliance to how we traditionally do things is not going to cut it. We need to go above and beyond, and we need to do more than emails and dojo blasts, because I'm a parent and I'm an educated person. I'm working towards a PhD. I probably didn't say that, and maybe I'll say it 1,000 more times before I leave the board, but because, you know, we love to talk about it. But if an email doesn't have something to catch my eye, I have 3 different emails. I'm not going to stop. I'm a capitalist like everybody else. I'm a consumer. I have like 1 billion emails every day. It's just not enough. Sending things on Dojo, not enough. I've stopped paying attention to Dojo because it's constantly advertising that we upgrade services and all this other stuff every time you open the app. We need to be doing more. Like, why aren't we? Are we canvassing, like, sort of like, you know, politically, like couldn't we even volunteer to like go around our areas with a clipboard and be like, hey, you know, I'm a local person on the board of whatever this is, Bond Oversight Committee. Sorry, and you know, like, we really need more participation. And like, how are we communicating the importance of participation? Is it guys in ties in an office thinking up these advertisements, or are you locating people from within those areas and like saying, like, how should we communicate this and make this like very obviously important to participate in? Because as a person who considers themselves educated, I have no idea when any of this stuff is going on unless I look it up because I want to, you know what I'm saying? And most people don't want to. And so we've really got to figure out, like, what are we doing that kind of goes above and beyond what we typically do, above what we have to do to be compliant, things like that, because if it's not working, it's not working. Sorry.
Thank you, Ms. Allen. Ms. Gamboa Harris.
Margarita Gamboa Harris for the record. A couple of points. I think I agree with a lot of the points being made up here, and also as a former principal, I understand that, you know, sometimes we want to get our parents in, and it's a struggle to get our families involved, and so I know that you have to do multiple ways, and so one of the ways is urgency, right? Is bringing up the urgency, and so I'm wondering how maybe we can make it urgent by either area, region, by trustee area, where like a map that says percentage-wise, like this is the urgency, that this is how you're going to be affected, like 50% urgency that over here, this area, you're going to be strongly affected or more. And then that way they can participate in giving feedback. Of course, the other is boots to the ground, right? Right there in their faces. I remember being at the dismissal gate, paper flyers, passing them out. Here's the survey, connect to it, scan, whatever, but right there in the faces of our families. Also with inviting ourselves to SOT meetings or Title I meetings. Title I schools are required to have a meeting every month for families. And so I don't know if that's been a, maybe disjointed communication that's happened, but I think, 1,800 responses, it's going to come back to bite us if we're making decisions based on 1,800 surveys out of 300,000 students that could be possibly affected. The other is, I try to go on the survey right now as a parent, and it is closed. So I don't know if there's maybe a different Plan B survey now that it's active again, if it's possible to open that survey. I don't, if that's something that is available. And so those are my points. And again, I do realize again and understand the struggle of, getting our CCSD parent surveys every year, and then we had to reach a certain percentage. And so it was even iPads, our staff members with iPads in the morning, in the after school, getting them to, come on, sit down, please, and here's I know In-N-Out had cards in the past, and we would have, In-N-Out cards for that purpose. So there is a way. We just probably need to have more boots on the ground and more of a partnership with our district and us. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Jackson-Hale?
So I did write down our SOTs, but also our PTOs and our PTAs. Like, I feel like if we're hosting these meetings at these schools, we should at least have a minimum captive audience of at least those people at those schools when we're hosting those meetings. So I don't know if we can engage them in the process and have them help us push out the message as well. But I was wondering, you had said something about getting together like in the summer and plan to like re-engage. So I was just wondering what the timeline looks like as far as that, because obviously parents were about to check out in about a week from all of that stuff. So just wondering when you're going to start planning to talk to those parents again. I think when you have a captive audience at the beginning of the school year, that might be the best time to start talking about that again and hooking those parents as they're bringing their kids back in to start school. So kind of wanted to ask, like, what does the process look like as far as re-engaging the parents?
If I could ask for your patience, we got that in the last slide of our presentation today.
All right. More to, we do have a long presentation,
No
Mr.
problem.
Camejo.
I've been good today. Everyone come out for the record. Also, just some more ideas of reaching out and working together with county commissioners and stuff. For example, there was a great great community event on Cinco de Mayo on the east side. Had over 100,000 people there. A table and a booth would have been a great place to engage. And then also, boots on the ground, flyers and so on. At 2 o'clock every day, I'm in the parent line picking up my kids from school. Hey, tap on the window. We roll down the windows. While we're waiting there patiently for our little monkeys, give us a survey to do. It's a lot of missed opportunities. So what I'm trying to say is, reach out to us community members that know our community, that know where everybody's at. A table at the swap meet, believe it or not, there's 450,000 people there on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday at the outdoor swap meet. So if you want to reach the Hispanic community, I'll tell you exactly where they're at. But you gotta work with us and stuff, because if you're not successful, then as a whole we're not going to be successful.
Thank you, Mr. Camejo. Anybody online? All right, thank you. To that end, I think we should continue with this presentation, but I appreciate all of the points of view being shared so far.
You saw an image similar to this on our first presentation to you guys, but it's just underscoring that there is a large enrollment bubble that's graduating out of your system. right? The way this chart reads is kindergarten up through 12th, from the bottom to the top. Left to right is years, and it's a heat map. So you can kind of see the larger bubble that's their seniors and graduating out. And beneath that are much smaller cohorts. On to the right, you have the charter schools, which have been growing at the same time. But there's some strategic implications that we see in this data, and we're going to be utilizing when we create options moving forward. And that there's definitely going to be a priority on improving and replacing your existing facilities over building for growth, because the growth has kind of peaked. Now, it's not to say there aren't areas and discrete areas that continue to grow or have unmet demand for capacity. But it is to say, in general, there's going to be a shift in the complexion of your CIP moving forward, really towards reinvestment in your older facilities.